Bob Dylan's now infamous performance at the 1965 Newport Folk Festival was described later on by critics as a moment that electrified half the crowd and electrocuted the other half. Since emerging on the folk music scene in 1962, Bob quickly became the face of folk music, honoring the music of those who had come before him, particularly Woody Guthrie, later on Pete Seeger, and also singing alongside contemporary folk musicians like Joan Baez. His socially inspired anthems like Blowin' in the Wind and The Times They Are A-Changin' earned him the title of the voice of his generation. But by 1965, Dylan was ready for that change he sang about to be true of his music. He later said that at that point he was actually ready to give up his entire career because the music he was singing no longer gave him the spark that it once did. His solution was to plug that music into an amplifier. In his 1965 album, Bringing It All Back Home, we got a glimpse of the direction that he would go with the opening title, or the opening track, Subterranean Homesick Blues. So later that summer in 1965, controversy swirled around Dylan as he prepared to headline the Newport Folk Festival, a place where he had spent previous summers, but as a clear acoustic folk singer. This time, the organizers of the event worried that he would turn to his new electric music. There's a lot of angst leading up to the moment of what would he do. Apparently there was an electric guitar and an acoustic guitar there, and in the last moment, you bet, he grabbed his 1964 Sunburst Fender Stratocaster and made his way onto the stage. His decision was clear. Playing a set list of just 3 songs, including a song that was a live debut that he would later release, You Know It, like a Rolling Stone, the crowd offered a mixed response, filled with people who were simultaneously booing him and cheering him on. He divided his fan base, some of whom were ready for him to pave this new way into rock and roll music in the second half of the 60s, and others who wanted to hear him play those hits that they had come to love. After a brief interlude, and after apparently some cajoling to get him back onto the stage because he didn't want to go, he went back onto the stage with an acoustic guitar in hand for a simple encore that included as the second song, Mr. Tambourine Man, much to the crowd's delight. But before that, just as one more jab at him, he sang It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. The song employs these eschatological images that we're accustomed to in Dylan's music, warning of the urgent need to take what can be salvaged before everything that is known is overthrown. The song begins, as some of you might know, you must leave now, take what you need you think will last, but whatever you wish to keep, you better grab it fast. The song concludes with a striking image of upheaval and reversal when he says, the vagabond who is rapping at your door is standing in the clothes that you once wore. Strike another match, go start anew, because it's all over now, baby blue. The song takes on a very specific meaning in the wake of his electric performance. Simply put, there's no going backward for Dylan nor his audience. This new electric Dylan has shed the clothes that he once wore and is starting over. Yet, at the same time, he has brought with him those enduring and essential aspects of himself and his musical style. One of those essential and enduring qualities about Dylan is his subversiveness, or his ability to warn of the great reversals that are coming to us as individuals and maybe even to a society in general. His subversiveness has provided significant fodder for people like me even, preachers and theologians, because the scriptures themselves that we proclaim, the scriptures that are a part of our tradition, they are incredibly subversive texts. Our lectionary this year, year C, is leading us through Luke's gospel most Sundays, a little bit of a smattering of John's gospel here and there, but mostly Luke. And we've already discovered very early on this year that St. Luke is a frightfully subversive evangelist. Mary's song, her Magnificat, in Luke chapter 1 introduces themes that are then repeated throughout the entirety of Luke's gospel. She sings, God hath put down the mighty from their seat, and hath exalted the humble and meek. He hath filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he hath sent empty away. We grow uneasy then as Luke, just a few chapters later, reinterprets those Beatitudes that we have learned to love and appreciate from St. Matthew's Gospel by adding a series of warnings. Warnings that feel like they're targeting people like us. Luke's Jesus adds, woe to you who are rich, for you have already received your comfort. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you will go hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you will mourn and weep. If we're honest, Luke's gospel electrocutes us rather than electrifies us. Luke's gospel electrocutes us because passages like these, well, they warn us. They warn us that if we believe that we're safe in the lives that we lead, we should throw that into question. The reasons we tell ourselves that we are safe in this life, they may not in the long run hold up. We look at our wealth, we look at our satiated stomachs, we look at our ability to laugh at situations, and we look at them as evidence that we're doing the right things in life. We've made the right choices, and as a result of those right choices, we have the wealth and the comfort that we currently possess. What could be wrong with that? That's what America was built on. The success that some of us get by our hard work, by pulling up ourselves from our bootstraps, by going the distance when others around us, well, just wouldn't. And yet, what's most interesting about our readings this morning from both Joshua and Luke is that the people who seem to be doing the right things in these texts find themselves excluded from the eschatological banquet. Isn't it interesting that it's the circumcised Israelites? They're the ones who, in the end, are not permitted to enter the promised land. I mean, they did so much right. They received the sign of the covenant, marking them as God's chosen people. They were the ones to partake of that first Passover, to be delivered out of Egypt, to pass through the Red Sea that later drowned Pharaoh and his chariots. They received the law from the Lord only at the last minute to put God to the test in the desert and to fail to enter into a land flowing with milk and honey. It's their uncircumcised children, now adults, who, by the way, end up getting circumcised, and the hill that we heard so beautifully termed in Hebrew is literally translated the hill of foreskins. There's an image for you. It's these people who instead inherit the promise that was intended for their ancestors. The people who seemingly time after time did everything right except that one thing at Meribah. The point of the prodigal son parable, it's not necessarily about the repentance of the extravagantly reckless younger brother. I mean, hey, come on. Any of us can blow a bunch of cash on booze and women and then feel sorry for it afterwards. Nor is it the forgiving response of the father. Because which of you would not respond this way for your kids? Those aren't necessarily the point of the text. It's easy enough one way or another to see yourself in those images. This parable comes as a warning to those of us who have done the right things in life. Those of us who are like the elder brother. Notice how the text turns the tables at the end. And again, this sort of subversive way. The elder brother, the one who's never left his father's side, the one who has worked tirelessly, maybe even thankfully, he certainly feels that way in this moment for his father, finds that his sense of justice and his indignation at the breadth of his father's mercy have excluded him from the final banquet at the end of the story. I mean, you have to sympathize with him a bit, right? He's done the right things. He's done what he's supposed to do. He's waited to receive his inheritance. He's not asked for it up front. He's not gone off in a spree of debauchery and sin and wickedness. And he comes in after working a hard day in the field, the sort of hard day that you and I put in, sort of hard day that we're told in our society matters for something because, gosh darn it, it separates us from those people. He comes in from a day like that only to see that his brother, who's had a heck of a week in Vegas, comes back, says, Dad, I'm really sorry, I messed up. And all of a sudden we're throwing a banquet for him? Father's never thrown a banquet for me for the things that I've done. You have to sympathize with this guy a bit. In the end, I think what these texts are telling us is that the most damning and dangerous posture a follower of Jesus can take is to cling to our moral uprightness, to believe that we've done the right things, to take a self-congratulatory stance that looks down on others who have not been as ceremonially as pure as us, or maybe even as morally pure as us. Because as Jesus says, it's those people, the sinners, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, who are going into heaven before the elder brother? People like us? I'd come to confession, but I don't have anything to confess. I responded and I said, I might be new to this parish. This was years ago in a previous parish. I said, I might be new to this parish, but we've interacted enough. I could jog your memory if you need some help. Taken aback, he said, I've never had a priest talk to me like that before. I said, you'll get used to it. I get that a lot. But I've discovered that what most people mean when they say that they don't have anything to confess is that they mean I don't have anything to confess compared to what that guy over there has done. We're all headed towards a great exchange, one that will electrocute us, one that will electrify us. Those who trust in the things that they've done in this life, their moral accomplishments, their ceremonial accomplishments, those who point the finger at others and say, thank God I'm not like that person there. Or you know what's wrong with America? That person over there. That's what's wrong with America. Those who acknowledge their sin, their wretchedness, who take to heart the Lenten disciplines that the church puts upon us in this season, those who trust in the Lord, they're going to discover the greatest exchange of all. They're going to discover the exchange that our passage from 2 Corinthians talks about. How, for our sake, God made him who knew no sin to become sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. That is the exchange that electrifies us as children of God, that makes us fully alive. The exchange that is reached by humbling ourselves, by that downward trajectory that Jesus took in becoming human, in taking our mortal nature upon him, in clothing himself in our flesh so that we might be clothed in his divinity. It's a simple invitation of this Lenten season. The invitation to follow the downward trajectory of Jesus, to humble yourself, to recognize that at the end of the day, there is no difference. Our sin, their sin. We are both simultaneously the younger child, the prodigal, and the older brother. And the sooner we realize that, the sooner God can begin to embrace us and welcome us into the party. Amen.